even remembered it. But then John Rockwell was on television one day talking about me. He was the one that introduced me to Joe Papp.
At 78, Linda Ronstadt has done it all. 11 Grammys, platinum records, a voice that defined a generation. She's outlived the critics, outlasted the trends, and walked away from fame on her own terms. But there's one thing she never talked about. Not in interviews, not in memoirs, not even to friends. One name, one story, one musician she couldn't stand. Not then, not now. For decades, Linda kept it buried, a pact of silence, a scar from a war no one else saw. But now, with her health in decline and nothing left to protect, she's finally breaking her silence. And the truth? It's not who anyone expected. He was adored by the public, celebrated by critics, a titan of the era. But behind the stage lights and studio gloss, he pushed Linda to her breaking point. This is the story of how it all fell apart, the feuds, the betrayals, the final name she never wanted to say. Until now, long before the silence, there was sound. And not just any sound, the kind that poured through canyon walls, drifted through eucalyptus trees, and echoed in wood-paneled studios where legends were made. Linda Ronstadt wasn't just a voice, she was the voice. In the late 60s and early 70s, Laurel Canyon wasn't just a neighborhood. It was the nerve center of modern music. The Eagles, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, they weren't superstars yet. They were kids with guitars, sleeping on each other's couches, writing lyrics that would rewrite American music. And Linda? She was in the middle of all of it. When she sang, everything stopped. She could belt rock, whisper folk, and slide into country, like she'd lived 3 lives in one breath. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing feeling. And everyone, producers, critics, other artists, they chased her. But fame has gravity. And in that golden world of harmony and hope, egos quietly swelled. Linda was rising fast, faster than some were ready to accept. She wasn't just the girl in the band anymore, she was the band. And that shift? It made some of her closest collaborators uneasy. Because as her spotlight grew, so did the shadows behind it. Every harmony hides a dissonance. And in the canyon, behind the handshakes and shared stages, the tension hummed louder than any amp. Linda's first brushes with conflict weren't public. They started in the studio, late nights, bad takes, passive-aggressive notes passed off as constructive feedback. Don Henley was one of the first. He'd started as her drummer. Then came the Eagles, and then came something else, resentment. He admired her, yes, but that admiration turned to competition, and when she started headlining solo, outselling his records, drawing his fans, something shifted. He once called her the best singer I've ever worked with. Then he stopped calling at all. Frank Zappa was a different beast, a genius, yes, but difficult, demanding, borderline cruel in critique. He once told Linda in front of a full studio that she sang like a cartoon mouse. She laughed. Everyone else didn't. It wasn't about insecurity, it was about control. Linda wasn't playing their game, the one where women were muses, not makers. She had opinions, direction vision. And some men, even brilliant ones, didn't like that. The feud stayed quiet for years, but inside her, they were building. A list was forming, 7 names, 7 moments she'd never forget, and one that would define everything Don Henley, the friend-turned-competitor. He resented her rise, undermined her talent, and when she turned down his invitation to tour with the Eagles again, he told Rolling Stone she'd lost her edge. She never responded, but she never forgot. Frank Zappa, the genius who mocked her, called her too pretty to be serious, then begged her to sing backup when his vocalists walked out. She refused. Years later, he sent her a signed vinyl with one word, "Sorry." She never opened it. Paul Simon, the perfectionist. They worked together briefly but clashed endlessly. He wanted 10 takes. She gave him 3. He told her she lacked depth. She told him to hire someone else. He did, but she outsold him that year and every year after. Neil Young. He was wild, electric, and unpredictable. They jammed once, just once. He walked out halfway through, mumbling, "This isn't real music." She cried in the bathroom. He never knew. She never forgot. Warren Zevon brilliant and brutal. He once said she sucked the danger out of rock, then asked her to record harmony on his album. She declined. He told the press she was washed. Her album won a Grammy that year. Stephen Stills, another voice of the canyon, and another ego in its mist. He hit on her during a recording session. She brushed him off. He called her frigid. She called him forgettable. Bob Dylan. Yes, even Dylan. They respected each other on paper. But privately, she bristled at his dismissiveness. Once, backstage at an awards show, he asked her, "Do you even write your own stuff?" She smiled. "Do you even sing in tune?" Each name was a paper cut, small in isolation, but together they bled, and yet none of them were the one, the real wound, the real enemy. That name, the one that haunted her the most, hadn't been said. Until now, some feuds fade, some get forgotten, but some carve themselves so deep into your spirit they become part of your story, whether you tell it or not. For Linda Ronstadt, there was one name like that, a name that lived in the silence, the one she never said out loud. They met at the height of everything, both stars rising, both sharp as glass, and just as fragile inside. He was magnetic, clever, revered. Everyone wanted to work with him, and when he walked into a room, he owned it without even trying. She admired him at first, his ambition, his talent, his complete refusal to play nice. He challenged her in the studio, sometimes brilliantly, sometimes brutally. Their early sessions together were electric, volatile, legendary. But it didn't take long before admiration curdled into something darker. He didn't just disagree, he dismantled. He'd cut her off mid-take, change keys without warning, say things like, "Let's try it again," but with someone who can actually hear pitch. It was psychological warfare, dressed in sarcasm and wrapped in studio jargon. He'd call her Little Miss Sunshine whenever she pushed back, then laugh like it was all a joke. But Linda didn't laugh. Not then, not ever. The worst part? No one intervened. He was too powerful, too revered. Everyone walked on eggshells around him, even producers, even executives. If he snapped, the whole room went silent. She told friends, quietly, that he made her feel invisible. Like I was just a voice in a box, not a person, not a partner. The last straw came during a recording session for a high-profile collaboration, a track meant to be the centerpiece of both their albums. She'd rewritten one of the verses, bringing it closer to her own experience. When she finished, he stared at her and said, "That's cute, but we're not here to journal our feelings." She walked out. Mid-session, no announcement, no goodbye. And that was it. The track was scrapped. The partnership dissolved. And the silence began. For years there were rumors, whispers in the industry, people guessing. But Linda never confirmed it, not in interviews, not even when asked directly. She'd just shake her head and say, "Some things aren't worth remembering." But privately, it haunted her. She saw him win awards, get tributes, get called a genius on TV retrospectives, and every time she'd change the channel. What hurt most wasn't just how he treated her. It was how everyone else let him. He moved on, publicly at least. Collaborated with other women, reinvented himself. A few years later, in an interview, he was asked about Linda. He smiled and said, "Ah, Linda." She had a voice like velvet and the spine of a porcupine. It was framed as a compliment. It wasn't. She stayed silent. Even then, it wasn't until her Parkinson's diagnosis, when the music stopped, when the stage went dark, that the weight of it started to change. She began revisiting old memories, reading old letters, listening to unreleased tapes. And in those quiet moments, she found herself whispering his name again, not out of anger, out of grief, because part of her had wanted to forgive him, wanted to believe he didn't know what he'd done, that maybe, deep down, he'd admired her too, just didn't know how to show it. But forgiveness never came. He died before she could ever say it to his face. And when she heard the news, she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just walked into her music room, sat down in the dark, and played the last demo they ever recorded together. Just once. Then she packed it away for good. This wasn't about revenge, or drama, or scandal. It was about finally letting the truth breathe. Because silence only protects the powerful. So who was he? He wasn't just a musician. He was a producer, an architect of sound, a man who shaped a dozen careers and scarred a few in the process. His name, Peter Asher, her longtime collaborator, the man who helped launch her solo superstardom, and the one who nearly broke her spirit. Yes, they made magic together. Yes, they created hits. But behind the platinum records was a relationship marred by control, dismissal, and emotional bruising that never fully healed. She never spoke out, because she thought no one would believe her. Because success, even shared success, makes people forget how sharp the edges can be. But now, with time slipping and her voice stilled, she wanted the truth known. Not to tarnish his legacy, but to reclaim her own. Linda Ronstadt didn't break her silence for shock. She did it because time has a way of distilling what matters. For decades, she protected her story the way she protected her voice. Fiercely, silently, and with a kind of quiet grace that most people mistook for peace. But silence isn't peace. Not always. Sometimes it's a wound with a velvet cover. She never sought to cancel him. She didn't want pity. She didn't even want vindication. She wanted clarity. Because the myth of Linda Ronstadt, the angelic voice, the goddess of Laurel Canyon, never told the full story. Behind the harmonies was a woman constantly told to be grateful, grateful to the men who discovered her, who shaped her, who made her feel small just to make themselves feel big. Peter Asher wasn't a villain in every chapter, but in her most vulnerable ones, he wasn't a hero either. And after everything they created, she needed that truth to live somewhere other than her memory. So she gave it to us, not in bitterness, in honesty. Because for every young artist coming up in a world that still sometimes worships genius at the expense of kindness, she wanted to leave a warning wrapped in wisdom. Your voice is not a favor, it's a force. And for every woman who's been told she's difficult for having standards, she left a message. Demand more, even from the people you admire most. She doesn't need applause anymore. She's not chasing charts. The music industry has changed, but pain still echoes, and stories like hers still matter. Linda didn't just sing songs, she lived them. And in telling this final painful truth, she gave us one more. That behind every legend is a human, raw, imperfect, and still learning how to let go. The records will keep spinning, the hits will keep playing. But now they'll carry a new note, one she wrote with courage instead of melody, and maybe, just maybe, that's the loudest song of all. If this story moved you, subscribe for more true music stories that deserve to be heard. Like, share, and tell someone, legends don't stay silent forever.